3 or 4 gunshots, and I heard the kids yelling, saying, "Mommy, no, no, mommy, no." And he just said, "We gotta go." He was like, she's hurt pretty bad, we have to leave. And he just got in the car and sped off.
It is now 6 people dead outside Philadelphia today. A domestic dispute apparently leading a man to shoot and kill his ex-wife, then begin hunting members of his own family as he traveled to 3 different locations. Police have identified the suspected gunman but do not know where he is at this hour. It is the kind of story we hear about so often in our news, and it barely makes headlines anymore, it seems. It might not even been included in this program had this weekend not marked the 2-year anniversary of the massacre in Newtown, Connecticut. Same with this rally in Washington state this weekend. 1,000 protesters at the state capitol upset over a new law that requires more stringent background checks before gun purchases. The group pledged not to comply with the new law, saying they're standing up for their rights. Here's a small sample of their thinking.
If you believe one rape is too many, then let's say it again. I own guns!
Finally, to Southport, Connecticut for a small, somber vigil in remembrance of Newtown. This was a pro-gun control ceremony with attendees reminding people to use gun locks and gun safes. Among the speakers, Fairfield's police chief, who was also a first responder in Newtown.
There's plenty of things that stick with you, but I think that the emotions that are exchanged in that street, probably not often talked about, but certainly visible and palpable that day to me.
The shootings at Sandy Hook Elementary and the death of 20 fourth graders in December 2012 also memorialized this weekend with an op-ed in the Stamford Advocate by Nicole Hockley, whose 6-year-old son Dylan was murdered at Sandy Hook. Hockley wrote a letter to herself before Newtown titled, "To the Mom I Used to Be." In it, she wrote, "The tragedy changed every single aspect of your life, not only because of the obvious absence of your child, but for the constant hole inside yourself that can never be filled again. There's this ongoing denial that even after 2 years is still very present inside you. You have Dylan's baby teeth and a lock of his hair on your bedside cabinet beside the urn holding his ashes. That's all you have of your little boy now. It hurts," she continues. "You know, it just hurts. You suppress your feelings as much as you can because you fear if you really let it out, you would never recover. If you started truly crying, you would never be able to stop. It would destroy you. And here's the thing, you didn't have to be that mom." For all the moms and dads reading this now, this doesn't have to be you, because every gun-related death is a preventable death. These are not random acts. You can't ever say, "This will never happen to me." She writes, "It can happen to anyone at any point, at any place. You have to be careful enough and be insightful enough to do something before it's too late." Hockley is also one of 10 families of Newtown victims suing the manufacturer of the AR-15 Bushmaster assault rifle, the gun used in the Sandy Hook massacre, saying in their suit filed today, "You sold the weapon of choice for mass murderers." Hockley and the other plaintiffs writing, "Bushmaster AR-15 should not have been sold publicly because it was designed for military use and is unsuited for hunting or home defense. In order to continue profiting from the sale of AR-15s, defendants chose to disregard the unreasonable risks of the rifle posed outside of these specialized, highly regulated institutions like the armed forces and law enforcement." But there's a wrinkle to this 2-year anniversary of Newtown. Free from the painful pictures and push for gun reform, it appears the national mood may have changed on guns and gun control efforts. New poll from Pew Research shows a majority of Americans, 52%, now think protecting gun rights is more important than controlling gun ownership. It is the first time in the 20-year history of the poll that a gun rights has garnered more support than gun control has. And it marks a major change in the 2 years since Newtown, when the numbers were essentially reversed. It's a change that has prompted gun rights advocates to declare victory and prompted the Daily News to put this on their cover yesterday. Referencing Newtown and the headlines that followed it, their cover yesterday, "We failed them." And Rich, quick update. For those who are advocates of gun control, Vivek Murthy, just confirmed as U.S. Surgeon General. He was a controversial choice. The NRA opposed him because he has linked gun violence as a public health issue. The NRA opposed him. He was passed 51 votes in the Senate this afternoon.
Jeannie, I always go to you on polls to try and explain to me the pulse of the public. I don't remember a poll where 90% of Americans agreed on anything. But in the aftermath of Sandy Hook, 91% of Americans believed that background checks, universal background checks to buy a gun, was sound policy. And nowhere. Didn't get anywhere in Washington. We all know about the fight that happened. Can you put your finger why? I mean, you had 26, either babies, okay, and I consider a 6 and 7-year-old, anybody with a kid, we know, right? Or educators that were unadulterated heroes that tried to save them, right? Then you had the idiot coming out a week later saying, the most tone-deaf statement, Wayne LaPierre, that he delivered. It was set clearly, and even folks on Capitol Hill that were NRA big supporters, they even knew they had to do something. How did it go from, we got to do something, to now, as Andrew just so articulately put, if anything, it's been reversed 2 years later, where more people are like, let's let anybody get a gun?
Well, I think the reason we didn't see any action is because of the way that we have our districts drawn in Congress, and you have Democrats and you have Republicans who line together with the support of the NRA and will not support passage. And so, it takes a lot of work.
Okay,
I
but
think
here,
we have seen some movement.
let me make it tougher for you. Those same Republican districts, if they supported gay marriage, right, they would have been worried about a primary and drummed out of office. With the velocity of like a Mach 5 jet, gay marriage changed, the Republicans felt comfortable to stand down. It's more than just the districts and how they are and the power of the NRA. There was something else here. There was a huge opportunity that was missed.
Because it's the intensity with which people feel that they want to protect the Second Amendment. I mean, there's a real intensity there. And,
But 70% of the NRA members supported this.
No,
anybody with little kids think it could be their school.
But I think, and I respect that poll, but I think, the American people, and I know you're going to laugh at this, are pretty rational about many things in large. So they do want sensible gun control, but when you ask them a question, do you want to ensure people have their rights? That is a really American thing. People want to protect their rights, not just gun rights, all kinds of individual liberties and rights. So people do try to balance those things. I think the reason why we didn't get gun control legislation out of Congress, I think we will eventually, it's going to be a long time coming though, is because of the way that the money that's behind it. And you see people like Bloomberg now and others who are supporting this push. We'll see more of that money in the system. We'll get there. But I thought the Daily News state is a little bit of an overreach. I mean, I understand that poll, but Americans are not so easily swayed. They want a balanced approach. People can maintain their guns legally. We should have that right.
We've gone the other way, though, Jeannie. Jeannie, we've gone the other way.
I think it comes down to fear. You see what's going on in Australia. You see with the terrorist groups that are back on the rise. It just comes down to fear. And as Janie said, money, the way the districts are gerrymandered, all these things come into play. Job security for the legislators, it all comes into play. And people are just scared, when it comes to their own security, whether or not anybody's going to go after somebody in Iowa or Idaho.
This had nothing to do with taking away somebody's gun. This is a background check. Yeah. And to me, that's just political cowardice.
And the other part of this that we haven't mentioned is Sandy Hook was not all about guns. It was also about another big story that we've talked about, mental health.
Okay, but as Andrew brought up this meeting, we're against a break here. All those people who said, well, we got to deal with the mental health, I'm sorry, what have they done about the mental health?
Well, that's my
jack.
point. Nothing has happened on that point either. Nothing has happened on that point either. These things take a lot of work and a lot of money.
Right, and nobody wants
to put the money
I just
up.
have two quick points. One is that we always say after these tragedies, boy, let's make sure that they don't die in vain. These 26 people died in vain. I mean, they absolutely died in vain. Nothing has come as a result of their death.
I mean, it's 2 years, maybe not in the long term, because there have been some movement,
That speaks to my second point, which is right after Newtown, we had guest after guest after guest who came onto this panel and said, you can't politicize a tragedy. You can't talk about this immediately after something like this. You have to wait for emotions to cool. I would say that the lack of movement we've seen since Newtown is an argument exactly the other way.
Yep.
That's why when tragedy happens, you respond to it. It happened in Australia in the 90s. They had a mass shooting. They basically banned all guns, and they bought back all of the guns, and their gun crime rate has dropped precipitously.
Well, and if you remember, we had this conversation. President Obama needed to get that. He had a 6 to 8 week window to get that legislation through.
I hold him as accountable as anybody. If he wanted to do more, wasn't going to be easy, okay, but he could have done more.
And listen, people fault Andrew Cuomo. He didn't get as high a number as he needed to become president.
Got it through quickly.
He got this done,
too.
and he caught a lot of stuff for it. Yeah.
It's not easy, but you saw this anniversary pass, and if you just think about the stories we do day after day, and to think that we can't do better as a country about this, still have a right to own a gun, but still have some sanity attached to this, give me a break. All right, we're going to take a quick look here. This is a still life photo of the day. A street artist using colored chalk to write out the names of all those kids who lost their lives at Sandy Hook. And again, a very powerful photo, one of many images that we saw this weekend, remembering those innocent lives. All right, let's head over to Facebook and Twitter. I ask you to sound off on our question tonight. Want to know whether you think America has gotten. What has it gotten better here on the subject of gun rights or gun control? Where are we as a nation on this? Okay, when we come back, we switch gears. You all follow the story coming out of Hollywood. Sony here, still reeling here, and many people asking, where is the line when it comes to our business in news? Is this a news story? Should we be talking about it? Some interesting people said, hey, stay out of this. We'll tell you about that and more after this.